the first ongoing stream of the calendar 2019 year. We are going to be having our wrap up chat on the Demigods game that we played. My name is Nick, and I have some people with me here. We'll go ahead and introduce them, and then I got a little bit of announcement to make. We will go in reverse alphabetical order. So Scott,
Hi.
go ahead, who you are and your Twitter. That'll be good.
Sure. Hey, my name is Scott. You can find me on Twitter at the Scott Blake. Um, any other information that I should be sharing here, Nick?
How about who you played as well?
Oh, okay. In our game of Demigods, I played Eklund, who was a demigod with the Trickster playbook, son of here we go.
Bar.
Var, yes, a Norse goddess of keeping your word and contracts.
I am Nick. I'm next in alphabetical order, I guess. And mine Twitter is TWOKNIKK, 2K Nick. And I played Valdis, the Muse playbook, and the Daughter of Hell. And Jason.
Hello, I'm Jason. I wrote the game Demigods, and I got to play everyone that wasn't these three. My Twitter is at it's probably okay.
And Bailey.
I am Bailey. My Twitter is at Ironic Adventures, and I played Bernanke, aka Bernie, and I was the Reaper daughter of Anubis.
All right. And before we get into it, we got some thoughts that we wanted to go over with the Demigods game and what we enjoyed and the different aspects of it. But I did want to announce, you probably noticed down in the lower left corner, that is a new charity whom we are raising funds for. And we are currently raising funds for Doctors Without Borders. And Doctors Without Borders is an independent global movement providing medical aid where it's needed most around the world. You can click the button right down there, down below the stream that says donate. Or you could go to our homepage, rollforchange.org, and click donate, and it'll bring you to our fundraiser. Now, with all of that out of the way, let us jump right into the questions. The first one I had here, or topics I should say, because they're not necessarily questions. The first one I had here is sort of something that I always liked about Demigods, and that's the setting itself. I'd only played one game before in Demigods, and I think Scott had also played a game before. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And Bailey, this was your first game, correct?
Yep, I was a newbie.
All right. And the setting, as Jason set it up, is kind of the setting for every game of Demigods, where you are the only group of demigods that can hang out with each other without destroying the world. I personally really enjoy that. I wanted to get everyone else's thoughts on that as well before I kind of go long form into why and gush about it. Anyone can jump in.
Oh, sure. I mean, I really enjoyed the concept of it as a whole, like being able to play children of gods that we know in the real world, just through the vast history of mythologies. Just be like, I want to be their kid, and the fact that you get to hang out with at least a couple others who are the same, it creates a very unique type of bond where, like, of course, these characters, as long as they get along, would probably want to hang out anyways, because they're the only other people who kind of understand what they're going through.
Right. Yeah, I definitely like the whole you're the only group that can do this, because it's fun to be superheroes, but like in a world where everyone has superpowers, it's like, how are you going to make yourself stand out? Where in this one, it's like, no, this is it. This is how we do this. And that's kind of fun because it makes you feel grander almost.
I think that's kind of my view as well, is the grander, just to kind of
Super extra special.
One of the things I was really trying to do was make it feel different from a superheroes game, because our, modern superheroes came out of our mythology and the stories that we've told ourselves for generations. And, it's real, like you can see those roots in everything from like Superman and Wonder Woman to the X-Men and then obviously Thor. um, so it was tricky to make it, to really distinguish it from being a superhero game. And so I liked the idea of, I'm glad that it feels special because that's what it, like there are probably some other demigods in the world, but they're not able to work together the way you all are. And I think that feels fun.
Oh yeah.
I think that it uniquely sort of makes each game group the main character of their group.
Mhm.
Because you play in like some of the bigger sword and sorcery type games, or you play in a masks game, which is another powered by the apocalypse game, and you do kind of feel one of many. There are other adventurers, there are other superheroes, there's other of you out there, and sometimes you can not feel like the main character in your own story if the GM or DM is not great at establishing that. Whereas,
Although I do think like one of the cool things about masks is that that's kind of the point, that there are people who are like pressuring your existence and your goals and what you think is important, which I just think was such a genius idea in a world full of superheroes. You're right, like you could totally feel like a side character, and to find a way to incorporate that, I thought was really neat about that.
The playbook says you are somebody's sidekicks.
Uh-huh.
yeah, and I did it. It wasn't like a slight at mask. Definitely, that game is meant to be played that way. But sometimes you want to be the star. You want to be the main characters. And this game, if you don't feel like the main character is playing demigods, something has gone seriously awry. Because it's written in such a way that almost forces everyone to be this group of awesome, take no prisoners, butt kickers, essentially. Whatever they try and do. And the setting itself as well, being modern, I think is really important. A lot of the God-esque games don't seem to have a modern take on it. And I love the modern God setting even from when I was a kid and reading different books and stuff like that.
All those influences are so fun, like American Gods or Good Omens or all that stuff, and also what's that?
Percy Jackson. I'm sorry, I feel
yeah,
like you could definitely get some of that out of there.
Sure. I know a lot of people who wanted to use demigods to try and play in the Percy Jackson world, which I think is totally doable. I haven't read the book, so I don't really know. But the other thing, also the game Scion by White Wolf was a big influence for me, just because it was like modern day gods. Like, well, I want to play that, but White Wolf can be a little fiddly sometimes, and I wanted to have a little bit pared down way to do it, and the PBTA structure lets you set things up in a good way, and then it also gave me the avenue to in Scion and a lot of other settings, you have to be at least somewhat similar to your divine parent. And what that means is they have to define what that means. They have to go through every god in all the pantheons they want to support and describe what it means to be a child of Zeus, or the son of Isis, or the daughter of Amaterasu, or whatever it is. They have to go through and specifically list all that stuff. And I really wanted to have a setting, more like American Gods, where like everything is real. And not pinning down and saying, well, this is what it means to be the kid of this person. That like frees it up for you to decide, like, oh, I like having this parent, or this parent is a jerk to me and I don't like that, and to make that story your own. I hope.
Hey, I really did enjoy that as well because it was one of those things where it's like just because your parent is a death god doesn't mean you have to be a reaper. I know that's what I did, but that's because I was like, I'm going to hand this up. But I like that, death gave birth to a muse in Nick's character, and I think that was kind of fun. And I like that aspect of it where you can just kind of branch out, because who's to say if you're going to be the child of this god that you're automatically going to be the same path they did? Nobody does that in real life. Even some of the myths don't even do that.
And I will say I've done it both ways now, where I played hard into what the god was like, and with Valdis I played very against type with what the god is like. And it was, I mean, both ways was super fun, and it made the game different each time, because it's sort of this parental responsibility with the first character I played, who like I have to either act like this person or sort of be that, because it was for Coyote and I was a trickster, so play like Coyote, be like Coyote, do trickstery things. Whereas with Valdis there was a lot more freedom to be herself, and that's great for both characters, having that constriction as part of the character generation, or having that freedom as part of the character generation. Does anyone have any further thoughts on that before we move on?
Nah, I just like this game. I mean, I've been saying that a lot. It's just everything about this game appeals to me. The ability to play teenagers, bad teenagers, gods, the fact that it's like American gods basically, and I'm like, I love all those things. Gimme.
Oh yeah. Also, I wanted it to be, like you could play as teenagers if you want. You can play as adults. I've also had people play with the time setting a little bit. Like there was a game somebody ran in the 20s. I've been toying around with the idea of actually trying to get it to work like in an ancient Greek time. All the abilities and stuff are like modern day wording, but I think it's pretty easy to trick it to play in whatever sort of time you want it to be.
I just thought about how much fun it would be to play gods in the 70s and mess with people.
It would just kind of change what are the current like cultural gods that are there and powerful. Like no god totally. On the internet back in the 70s.
Right.
Media would be very different.
Oh yeah, I guess that's worth mentioning in the setting too, is the made up pantheons that I've been working on. That's been a really fun part of the setting of what does it mean to have gods of science and internet and media and all that. And I guess back in the 70s, your media giants would be like newspaper and book.
Radio.
Oh, radio, yeah, and TV for sure.
Yeah. It reminds me, and this is a really deep cut, so if no one gets it, that's fine. But
I'll try.
Everworld, the book series from like the turn of the 2000s.
By
Applegate.
Oh, actually, that's not what I'm thinking of.
So it was one where all the gods are real at the same time. They're always in conflict with each other, because if they're all real, then they probably don't like each other. It was a modern setting as well.
I might have to look that up.
It was good,
sounds
good for
pretty
its time,
pretty
but
cool.
I was also 13, so let's
oh well, yeah, you never know.
But it reminded me a lot of that, and that's one of the reasons I sort of gravitated to it. At first was that it triggered something in my nostalgia brain of being like, I like this book series. And I think there's something like Percy Jackson, that book series, all these things. It sort of triggers all those different things at the same time.
Yeah.
It's great. So our next thing is the spindle, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is unique to Demigods, correct?
As far as I know, although, it bears some resemblance to, like in Masks when we first came together, as a concept. I know there are versions of Apocalypse World where they will sort of figure out like what was the apocalypse, how did everything go bad, and what does that mean to us today? Like, was it evil robots and now there are robots we need to think about, or was it a nuke, or all that is definitely worth having a conversation. I like the idea of that collaborative setting, where we get to pick something about what's what it is that shapes our lives. So that's kind of the first goal. The main reason I put the spindle in is because of my deep dislike of okay, so you meet in a tavern. Well, I don't know you. I can't trust you. Well, who are you? We've never met before. Like, okay, I can't do it anymore. So, but then it also seemed to tie into the fiction of the setting and explain why these demigods can actually like hang out and team up when we're saying that that's not usually possible. So it kind of provided a explanation for that.
One of the things that I enjoy about it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and I'll just say too, just to kind of set this up, because I'm always really interested. I would say the spindle is also one of the things that I've gotten the most like binary feedback on. A lot of people like it and think it's fun. Plenty of people have been like, I don't understand the point of this. Why is this person in the game? We don't need a MacGuffin. Like, we don't want to have a like save them of the week kind of thing. So that's been an interesting perspective as well. So I'm just curious how that feels to you all.
Honestly, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just toss out something quick. I would say that has a lot to do with how the game's being run. If you're playing it kind of like not the game monster of the week, but the concept monster of the week. If you're playing it that way, then you're probably going to end up saving your spindle more often than not. But I could very easily conceive of a Demigods game where the spindle is like your handler and you end up being a bunch of agents, or a Demigods game where the spindle is a shared family member and you all come from the same family and it's sort of like a mafia type thing or something like that. Like there's many creative ways to use the spindle beyond just the damsel, whether they be male, female, or otherwise. I know that seems like the easiest one to go back to because they're low powered and you're high powered, and I do understand jumping back and forth between that. But just quickly, like my brain when I heard about it instantly went to like, what different ways can I have a spindle?
Oh yeah. Also, I would say one of the most frequent requests I've gotten is, can we have a spindle playbook? Which will it is. I'm going to put that in as one of our stretch goals for the Kickstarter, because I think it's a fun idea. It hadn't occurred to me until someone, like literally, I had never thought of that until somebody at a convention was like, "Wait, I want to play the spindle. I like playing Mortals, and that sounds cool." I was like, "Huh."
Okay.
And see, so Monster Hearts has a mortal character that is called the Chosen One.
Yeah.
And I kind of like what you were saying about playing the spindle, kind of like that. But the one thing that I like the most about the spindle is I'm almost always a GM when I play. If I'm running the game, I'm always playing. And I like the spindle because the spindle is kind of like a constant NPC that they don't have to save the rest of the group. They don't have to constantly be getting in trouble, but they're constant. They're there. And it makes it feel more like we're equally playing, as opposed to, okay, well, I'm running this thing. Try to pay attention to what I'm telling you because clearly, I'm in charge. It feels less like one person running the show and more like a group playing together. And I really like that aspect of it. And honestly, I could see having a spindle be like the one fighting with your group, even if you don't want them, they're immortal. But you're like, crap, Immortal's doing, the thing again because he thinks he's special.
But even outside of that, I could see wanting to play a spindle and just like, you're the one unpowered person in the group, which means if you're going up against another like deity or demigod or some other mythological creature, like you're not triggering any of their alarms, you're just a human. And it may be a lot easier to just get away with things. So they see a demigod somewhere, oh yeah, they're up to something, I'm going to keep an eye on them. But they see millions of humans a day.
Yeah.
Oh, you're the Robin in the Teen Titans.
Maybe, yeah.
Sorry to go back to superheroes, but that's where my brain went.
Aw, poor Robin.
I love Robin. Him
No,
and
he's
Lisa.
all right. He'll be okay.
Yeah, well, he's doing just fine.
I do think one of the fun things about the spindle is that it's an NPC that was built by the players.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that essentially gives the GM or Harold, especially for like a con game, I can imagine the spindle being key as a herald, because now you know something that each of the players want, and even if you don't use it for that herald or for that spindle, you can tie it in somewhere else, and you have all this information that you've sort of collected from all the different players. And I'm saying this I've not run a Demigods game yet, so I'm not speaking from experience, but I'm just kind of like, I GM more than I play. So my brain thinks of the things of like, well, how would this work if I was running it? How would this work if I was running it? And I think most of the players here are kind of more DMs than. But Scott, I know you.
Yes.
Do you GM a lot, or is it half and half?
I certainly DM far more than I ever play, which does feel like a shame sometimes. I play in a couple kind of like just friendly games here and there as just a player. Well, not just a player, but as a player. And it's a lot of fun, but DM is certainly where my focus is. Like building the story, building NPCs, building characters.
Does anyone have any further thoughts on our lovely spindle before we move on? I will say that not using the spindle in this game didn't make it feel any less of a Demigods game.
Nope.
Like, at all.
Oh, yeah, definitely not. No.
Oh, yeah, they weren't really a central figure this time, huh?
No.
I don't think any interactions happened between characters and spindle in this one shot.
Not on screen.
Correct.
I think they like texted you guys at some
Yeah,
point,
that's
or
about it.
there was some kind of like, what are you doing?
Oh my god, we told that person to come to brunch with us and then left.
Yeah,
We just realized.
it's all right. They didn't come. They knew.
Dang it, Dylan.
It was not the first time.
Yeah.
But that would also be a really funny element to just be like, oh yeah, we always plan to hang out with the spindle, but then something comes in the way and the spindle is just like, y'all left me in the comic book shop again.
I also like having a mortal who kind of sees past the demigod bullshit a little bit, and like your powers don't really work on them, and you have a bit of a foil there of like, no, look.
Try that tricky stuff
a little
on me.
bit of a reality check, which is kind of a fun opportunity as well.
I also kind of like it because it is sort of a humanizing figure. Because they, like you said, the demigod stuff doesn't really work on them. And it's, them kind of reminding them, yeah, you're a demigod, but you're also still half human.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that.
I would agree.
Is there anything about the spindle you'd want to see work differently? I'm open to, it doesn't have to be all positive for me. I'm tough.
No, but
I think it's a little weird to give too much on the spindle, since we played in a 1-shot/2-shot.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
Like in this one adventure, one quest that we had, they weren't central. But I imagine if we were playing this long term for anything more than a handful of sessions and quest lines, like, we'd be seeing them a lot more, and it would be great to see how they interact with us, and what they actually think of all this supernatural stuff that's going on.
Yeah,
because like they're used to it by now, but that doesn't mean they still are completely cool with everything. So I think in the longer form game, like, they would have a much bigger chance to shine outside of like directly impacting the story that's happening right now. Like, oh, we have to go save this person right now. It's like, oh, they're there. Yeah, we wouldn't have hung out today. They came by and like brought me cough medicine.
A shopping episode.
The only thing that I would have any commentary on would be that when doing tangles, there doesn't seem to be any mechanical advantage to putting your spindle in there.
That's a
Because
good point.
because with I have Bernie in two of my tangles, so if I'm rolling to I forgot the actual name of it, but if I'm rolling to help out, I get to add that to it.
Mm-hmm.
The possibility of me rolling to help Dylan is low.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That's true.
So-
That's an interesting point.
Until they become a player character.
Correct. If they're a player
Yeah,
character,
playbook.
absolutely.
Jeez.
Yeah.
But as
I'll have
an
to
NPC,
think about that. That's an interesting point.
I mean,
If
it's a
you're
nice.
playing a
nice
game
bit
where
of
the
story,
spindle
though.
is more of a player for the DM, then I could see how that would be a
Mhm.
benefit. Just
Although
like,
I will say in PBTA settings, I would generally discourage people from actively playing it as a character, and have it in there as your NPC. But the herald, or if you're running a PBTA game, at least for me, my strong opinion is to never roll dice, and so to Nick's point, it would be impossible to ever do a help roll for your spindle the way it is now. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. Thank you.
yeah, if there was some sort of, I hate to say resource because whenever you say resource in game design, it starts thinking about like, well, what is my carrying capacity and how
Right,
much gold?
right.
But like, if there was something that they provided to you, even if it was love and affection, or like something that you could
Yeah.
get more of by having them in more spots, then that
they
might
heal
be,
you with hugs.
yeah, it might be
Oh.
interesting. I know there's. I just kind of brought it up, and I have no answer for it. But it was just I know I have Dylan on here because of role playing reasons, but it wouldn't. It would
Yeah.
almost actively detract to take someone else's spot if we had a larger game group.
Yeah, well, mechanically it would detract, and it is optional to put the spindle in. So I think it's currently it's like a fun role playing opportunity, but it is interesting to think about. You're devoting a thing which otherwise would have a mechanical benefit to not have one, and that is interesting.
Well, for our group, we only had 3 player characters,
Right.
and there are, let's see, on my playbook, 6 tangles there.
Yeah,
And if
there's
I were to
6 on
put-
each.
If I were to put both of their characters to like just those other 2 characters and fill that up, that'd be 3 tangles with 2 characters. Anytime I went to go aid them, it'd be like +3, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So like at a certain point, it's like I just don't want to power game. It's like, yeah, I'll throw Dylan in one of those because it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, and hopefully too, like I've tried to write those tangles to the best of my ability, to be like, I don't think the same character would fill in all 6 of those. Like there's going to be one of those that's like, I'm a party animal. Like, oh, my character's not a party animal. And then, the rest of them aren't going to be related to that. Or the one of them's like, oh, I slept with so-and-so. Or like, oh, no, I'm not a sexy character. Like, that's the goal, but I'm sure there are characters out there who would fill in all 6. And that's definitely something to think about. Although I think typically gaming groups are like Demigods, I think is fits really well in the 4 to 5 player slot. And it probably really shines there.
Yeah. 1 to 2 tangles does feel really good.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about like a 5-player group as well, just thinking that way. Next,
I want to see how big I can make it.
Next on our topic
Big as you
list
want.
is combat and how it flows and how we enjoyed our combat scenes. We had, to my memory, and I have the memory of a goldfish, one big combat scene at the end.
Yeah.
That sort of flowed. It was 2 combat scenes that flowed together almost. It was the fabric combat and then the big bad combat.
Yeah.
I
It was
don't
like a
really-
multi-stage fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
What were? I'll kind of leave this for the other 2 players to start off with. What were your thoughts on how combat flowed and how you did things in combat?
I love it so much. because it's not like you have spell slots or like, you can do 3 things on this turn, like the way you would in D&D. It's like, well, is this thing in the room? Do you want this thing in the room? Yes, do it. And there's just so much room for creativity when it comes to combat. And it's not like roll to see if you hit how much damage you did. You have a fixed amount of damage for most things. And I'm down with that because it makes combat, I feel like, goes a little bit faster.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like you can do more theater of the mind stuff. And I like being able to do the storytelling part of stuff, not necessarily like the math and the rolling. Because personally, that's what I like. It was fun describing like how you punched a person and like pulling out the guitar sword and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I also love that I was allowed to have a guitar sword.
Yeah, I definitely like that when you are in combat, like you can just take a look at your moves and be like, I have this, so I'm going to do this. Doesn't matter how far away they are because it's not like time or round based. I also that like I like the fact that there's no initiative, so when you've got a good idea, it's just like, hey, Harold, I want to do this thing. Let me know when I can do this thing. And then like it just happens. And to go back to Bailey's point of like the damage dice, like there's not really any. I think really helps because it makes classes or playbooks that aren't necessarily combat driven, like the Trickster, for example. Like there's almost nothing in here that's about hurting people. But if I wanted to, like when I was creating my character, I could have picked an epic weapon or I could have just picked up a baseball bat and I'm as good as anybody else with that. Stats depending, of course. Like I could have put more bonuses in my was the fighting move here, smite your enemies.
Yeah.
But that's not how I wanted to play, so I wasn't too concerned, but it still didn't feel like I had nothing to do in combat. Like go out there and I can affect the scene. Even if I'm not killing something, I can still have an impact, and it felt meaningful.
That's good. I mean, I can't take too much credit for that. I mean, most of what you've described is pretty standard PBTA, but I am very happy to slot into that description because it really fits like the kind of games I want to play. So it was a natural progression.
Yeah.
Also, really like. I'm sorry, Nick.
I guess my pros and cons are the same pros and cons I have with every single other PBTA game. Is that I love the flow. I love the fact that you never really feel like what do I do? I'm a wizard and I've used all my spells. What do I do?
Yeah.
The cons I would have are if you take yourself out of a combat like I did, you're kind of out. Like you can't really jump in initiative order or anything like that, or really. If the Herald does a good job, which Jason did, cutting back to you every so often, that's great. But I almost feel like it took away from the tension that was happening with the fabric.
Well, I mean, if a character says, I'm going to run away from the combat,
yeah,
I don't know.
it's
I thought
kind
it
of
was
on
them.
and I do understand that. Yeah, like what I did was not like helping the combat move along or anything like that because I was trying to save the character whom we were looking after.
But yeah, like our mission there was to save that mortal who had no information on the supernatural, and you got them out of the way.
Plus, I think it was just really funny to be like, all right, they're in the middle of fighting this. How's the snogging going? That was just kind of fun for me.
See, and I almost think it would have, and this is personal opinion, it would have worked a little better finishing the combat than going back. Like, because cutting back and forth to me was a little weird. But that's not anything to do with the game or anything to do with like Jason running the game or anything like that. Because I can't think of a GM, myself included, who wouldn't do that because your thought in the moment is Nick's not doing anything.
Yeah,
Let's
share
cut
the
to
spotlight.
let's cut to them as a player. And as a player, I was kind of like, well, what I'm doing doesn't matter. Go back to the important people at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too, like there are definitely people in the PBTA ethos who are like, yeah, that is how you should do it. Like, yeah, like even say like, Nick, I'm gonna do this because this is a big deal, and then we're gonna get back to you and just be transparent about that too, and I know plenty of PBTA GMs who would run it that way.
I don't know. I like the flashback because that gave me time to think. So I was like, okay, they're gonna focus on that. Give me a second. Let me read over some things, try to form a plan.
Yeah,
Sure.
But I think also from a player standpoint and from a Herald standpoint, it gives you, like, if you're the player who leaves the combat, it gives you an opportunity to do more while that fighting's happening without like metagaming. It's not like we're going to come back to it right as you left. Oh, and everybody else died. But you're just out here making out, and you're like, I should go back and check on them because I think it's going poorly.
And I think it was that Muse's action out in the hall, like something went wrong, and then that gave me a hard move, and I think that's ultimately how you wound up in the final boss situation, was because several things out there went wrong as well, and so it was tied in.
That is true. That I didn't actually think of it that way, so that is a very good point.
It's advancing the story.
Yes.
Either way.
Yeah.
And just in regards to the flow and stuff, which is kind of the original topic that we had, PBTA has a great flow. Like I said, there's never a time where you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, because what you're supposed to be doing is just speaking. Like, I want to do this, and it's the herald's job or the storyteller's job or whatever to figure out how that happens. Okay, what stats are you rolling? What are you doing? Sounds to me like you're smiting an enemy, or etc. and so on. So, does anyone have anything else on combat? If not, we will move on to, I think this one will probably be quick because we kind of covered it a little bit already, but the attributes, the 5 different stats and how they factored into playing. Does anyone have any commentary on that?
So awesome.
Even with this being my second time playing through, there was still like some times where I wasn't sure, like, can I just bend fate whenever I want or read the weave whenever I want? Like, sometimes the openings weren't as obvious, but maybe that's just familiarity with the system. Like, the more you play it, the more you get used to just being accustomed to setting yourself up for that.
Yeah, those basic moves, I've actually gotten that feedback before, and that's part of my to-do list, is to reword that sort of trigger a little bit better. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That is definitely needs to be a little clearer of what it is you can do with that.
But as far as what those 5 attributes are, I think they cover the breadth of what's capable in the game fairly well. I don't feel like there's something missing there. It's not like, oh, I need a will stat or something in here. It's like, no, I think this covers it.
Yeah, that's not really something that I focus too hard on when I'm playing. I just, whatever the Herald or the GM says roll, I'm like, okay. I really like all the little names for things, and like the little, because like weird sounds like weird, WEIRD. But I also was like, okay, that's like your fate, and I like that. So I thought that was a little clever. And I like to smite your enemies because it makes you sound way more BA than you actually are. You're like, haha, smite everything.
Well, you are a demigod, so come on.
Yeah.
Smite something.
Yes. But that's not where my mind usually goes with demigods as a whole. It's usually like you're like a way watered down god. So I like that kind of gives you this feeling that you are so much more powerful than your mortal friends. Reading the weave was fun, and I'd like that you didn't stick to like any one pantheon for like themes. It's like, this is kind of Nordic, this is kind of Greek, this is kind of Christian.
Yeah,
that's fun.
All faiths welcome here.
Definitely enjoyed that quite a bit. I think when we talk about if we talk about the moves and stuff, that's another tab that I'm just going to gush because those are hilarious.
Yeah.
I definitely love all 5 of the moves, and I would agree, like a +1 to they encompass everything that needs to be encompassed here. Like, I can't think of an action that I as a demigod would take that wouldn't be encompassed here or just done. Because that's the other thing. Like, oh, it doesn't have a driving skill. And it's like, well, either you're driving normally and you do it, or you're driving under pressure and you're performing under pressure. So they all sort of work really well. I was very lucky to, in my first game, have played with someone who had played quite a bit of the game in Kimmy, and getting to see that example made it easier for me to understand them. So the game might benefit from, you know, people playing with people who are experienced, but you can't really promise that when it's
Right.
coming out. But I feel like all 5 of them are self-explanatory once you see them in action. So that's really
Cool.
my thing, is that if you, like, on paper they look weird. You kind of don't understand what they are, but once you see someone do it, you're like, oh, that's what that does.
Yeah.
Specifically,
there's-
Read the Weave is
Yeah,
the one.
there's a section in the book that's has to elaborate on that because it's not always immediately obvious what all that is for.
And it might do well with a because I know in some game books they have like the example of how someone did it. Or,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, lots of little sidebar fun
Yeah.
things like that.
Mhm.
like Tom and Jane are playing. Jane does this, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right, my list went away from me. Hold on. Okay. Next is one that I am going to say, and then I'm going to take a step back and let Bailey start going.
Hold on, let me turn my volume down a little bit.
The topic on how weapons, armors, and skills in general worked. So this is your gifts and your moves. I wrote skills because I forgot what those 2 things were called, and I didn't have my sheet in front of me. But your gifts and your moves.
So yeah, this is definitely something that, like, I've played masks. I want to say I played one other Powered by the Apocalypse, but I can't think of what it is off the top of my head. Monster Hearts. This is something that I think is sorely missing from the other 2 that I was just so excited about, because it finally feels like you can actually, like, fight. Like, masks, you can kind of do it, and it's like, all right, well, I have laser hands. That's what I'm gonna do. But I love the idea of, like, no, you get to design this weapon, and no, you actually have an AC now. Kind of, it's like you're not automatically just gonna take a ton of damage and then, oh, I'm down. You know, you have a little bit more harm that you can take, and I like that. And I like that there's something that just kind of absorbs that, which is fun. It kind of reminds me of something that they do in the Fate game, which I love and will gush about for hours. And I like that it's not just you have this sword is +1, this is what it does, roll this side of dice to do damage. All the weapons do the same stuff, basically. It's like, how do you talk about it? It's like, how do you explain it? And I love that because, again, it's a creativity thing. It's a, yeah, this is my baseball bat, but this is my baseball bat. And maybe many like it, but this one is mine, and it does so much damage. You know, and it's fun. I got to have a guitar that turns into a sword. That's the other thing. It's like, I know that not every Herald or GM is gonna yes and me as hard as Jason did, but I love that. It was like,
Why shouldn't you have a guitar that turns into a sword? I will be very upset if I meet somebody who disagrees with that.
Yeah, but that's like the thing, is there's so much room for creativity with that. It's like, yeah, you have these gifts, and nobody is ever going to pick the same combination of gifts or make their gifts do the same thing. It's like, yes, most people have played the Book of the Dead as this, but if you want to do it like that, yeah, let's do it. Let's explore how we'd be able to do that. And I love that because it was like, no, this is not just your iPad of the dead. It's like, yeah, you can use it specifically for this, or you can do that with it. And I like the mechanics that it's like, oh, you overpowered your thing. Now it's not going to work.
Bailey, next time you get to play, you should definitely look at the Warrior playbook. I don't know if you saw they have a move called Polyarmory.
I saw that one, and I was like,
Everything,
so
anything they pick
tempted.
up is anything they pick up is a
tempted.
weapon. It's fun.
I
It
think
sounds
if
like
we
it would
kept-
be right up your alley.
I think if we kept playing and I got another one where I could pick from that would be the first one I did. I really wanted that cloak, though. I'm dead. Y'all can.
Oh, okay.
You want to take it,
Oh.
Scott?
Yeah, I mean, we're on gifts and moves right
Yeah.
now, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mm.
I mean, I'm looking at the gifts I had to choose from, and I thought it made for a very interesting way to differentiate your character even within the playbook. Kind of like how, I mean, going back to D&D where they have subclasses, like once you hit level 3, like you start specializing. But in this you get to do it right off the bat. Like I chose an animal form and magic resistance and a mimic because I didn't care about fighting. But I did care a lot about blending in and like being able to get away. Uh, and so I went that way, and like I thought it made for a whole lot of fun. Uh, like the hardest part for me though was looking at this and just being like, how much can I actually get away with this gift? Like I know prestidigitation from D&D again, where it's small, magical, harmless effects, but in the real world, it means just like any sort of magic trick. I don't know, like how much you can scale that up or down. I had wealth on this list that I didn't take. It's like, how rich could I be? Like, could I be the richest man in the world if I took wealth?
It's definitely it's not just wealthy. It's like filthy rich. Is yeah, like
Scrooge McDuck rich.
Well, like private jet, multiple homes, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
If we were doing a long-term campaign, that definitely would have come in handy because you could have somebody fund it. But I also think,
yeah, I mean, from that end, I understand, but at the same time, like being rich is boring. You just buy what you need.
Yeah.
And from a storytelling perspective, that sounds boring. In real life, yes, I would love to solve all my problems by just throwing money at it and not worrying.
The biggest trick, or maybe the biggest goal I was shooting for with the gifts, is I didn't want any of them to feel like a must pick. Like, oh, on this playbook, if you don't pick Book of the Dead, you're an idiot. Like that's not really a choice anymore. So I'm glad that it felt like there were fun things to choose from. And
to that end, I think like one of the most difficult things would be pulling people from combat heavy games and convincing them not to take the epic weapon and epic armor right off the bat, where it's just like you're doing a bunch of damage and you're just soaking in a bunch of damage too, and it's not going to affect you.
Yeah.
Like, teaching them that no, you have to be able to play the story part too. And if big weapon and big armor.
If somebody wants to lean into their armor and weapon and be that person, like, I think there's room for that in the game too. Because also in this, like in a PBTA game, like a barbarian or a fighter in D&D, you're probably like, you don't have any room for like a decent charisma stat, or you have to devote some points, versus like in a PBTA game, you can be a little bit more freeform with like what your character is like.
Yeah, I mean,
more wiggle room.
Kind of what I was saying earlier, like any class, any playbook could be a physical threat on the battlefield. Like, I don't know, part of me would just be very worried you have 3 people who all get big godly weapons and armor and one person who just does not. And as soon as you get in a fight, like, yeah, anything that's going to be a threat to the other people will just murder the one without armor, and they have to be very smart.
Well, the
I mean, that's a glass cannon.
Is there's 2 points I'll say about that, which you're absolutely right, and I've actually seen that happen. However, if you don't attack someone, it's very unlikely that you will be attacked.
That's right.
And I don't know if this was in place when we played. I set up Smite Your Enemies. You can now roll Smite Your Enemies and not pick Exchange Harm. That's an optional part of Smite Your Enemies. So you could get in there and like take an advantageous position or make an opening for someone, but not deal harm and not take harm. Like you're getting in there and just being a pest. So that that trickster or that muse or whatever who just wants to be a distraction but also not get their face blown off, it has an opportunity to sort of get in there and mix it up.
Nice.
Yeah, and the way the game works, it's not as if the herald can target someone like and just be like, well, you're the weakest, so bang 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 bang, you're gone. Okay.
Yeah.
If you play smart, you're fine. If you go in with a -1 prowess into a fist fight, it's probably not going to work out well for you.
Or as just happened recently on, I got to run a game for my friends at Pixel Scandal, and they like got into a fight, and their fighter or whoever is like up there mixing it up, just like everything's going fine, and the elemental goes, "I'm going to use Cataclysm," and everyone's like, "You know what that does, right?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to do it," and just like epic, like. He's the reason that character died, not the monster they were fighting. But then we got to explore an afterlife and see what happens with your death move. So
that was the one thing I was sad we didn't get to do.
Well, I can arrange death if that's. It's not difficult.
But I didn't want to go see Dad.
I think that something that I enjoyed is that I went into. I don't even know if I mentioned this because I did it and then kind of forgot about it, to be honest. But I went into this trying to make a support character. Like, I want to make someone who will never attack anyone and make everyone else attack better. And with the muse, it has like motivational speaker or snake eyes, where I could freeze the opponent and give someone a free shot, and the aura of inspiration to help everyone do better. So all of that stuff gave me the options to do what I wanted to do in the game, despite not being a combat oriented thing. And then I ended up being in a fist fight anyway.
But it was a glorious fist fight.
But yeah, the moves and the gifts are fantastic. There's a good mix of open and closed-ended gifts, where like wealth is pretty closed-ended. You can't really like you're wealthy. That's what it is. But like aura of inspiration, or something like the Ring of Binding, like what that is kind of changes based on the discussion you have with the Herald.
Plus all the move names are just
Yes.
like every little description. I literally, after I picked Reaper, I was like, I want to see what everything else is. And I went and I read all the moves and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Like the like hashtag blessed and the like outfit of the day and stuff like that. And I'm like, I love all of this.
It's all right. My dog is having a minor emergency and needs some hugs. So
We'll allow dog on stream. It's okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Nick's cats, come on, you're okay.
All right.
So I think we've kind of gotten into everything with the weapons and the armors and the skills and everything.
Quick question for Scott. I don't know if you picked up on it. The all the trickster moves, or none of the trickster moves, involve dice rolling.
Yes.
And I wonder if that if you picked up on that.
I definitely did, and I'm pretty sure you reminded us during the setup for the game too.
Oh yeah, okay.
Which was a lot of fun. Which definitely made me feel so much more open in doing them. Like, I'm just changing my clothes now in front of everybody because it's a magical power, and I just boom, different clothes. Or like, I just need something out of my pocket real quick that's wasn't there before, and I have it. That's a lot of fun. No,
that's good.
Felt unique in that way.
Yeah, it did. It started accidentally where I got 3/4 of the way through and none of the trickster moves had dice rolls, and I thought, oh, this is kind of a fun idea. And I like the idea that the trickster doesn't leave anything to chance. They still have to roll the basic moves, but yeah, I don't know. I like that.
Oh yeah.
I would say as well that the moves themselves help define what the playbook is, and that's sort of a PBTA thing as well. But Jason had to write the moves in order to make it work like that way. And every playbook that I read, I could instantly tell what it's supposed to be without seeing the name of the playbook, just by reading the moves.
Oh, good. That's nice to hear.
Yeah, that's I would say that's a very well done piece of this, is that if I didn't know it was the muse, I could probably just read influencer and be like, oh, okay, this is kind of where this is going. I might not get the name exactly right, but that's what this thing is. The warrior, you could pretty easily read through that and be like, okay, I'm picking up where you're putting down here. So moving on from that.
Can I just say one last little thing real quick? I'm sorry. I do like that you could basically, if you really wanted to, have an entire party of tricksters and none of them would be anything alike. Just like I like that the combinations of things are so varying that you literally could just make a million of the same like playbook and they'd all be completely different.
Hmm. Yeah, I've played a trickster, and it was nothing like Scott's, and I think that's awesome.
good.
Yes, that does make me feel better. That I wasn't just doing like the thing that everybody else assumed a trickster would want to do.
No, but even within that, like, I mean, almost every Reaper picks Book of the Dead just because like it sounds cool, but then it all does like it works differently for almost everyone who's had it. Like it's the same gift, and it's like, well, I don't know what that does. You tell me.
I actually had a conversation with somebody on Twitter that did the same thing, and they picked almost all the same gifts, and I think even the same divine parent as me, but it was two completely different people, and I loved it.
Oh, you mean they didn't have a hippo as a motorcycle?
They did not
I'm
have a
shocked.
hippo as a Harley Davidson Fabulous, but they did have a Kopesh, which I appreciated because it's an awesome sword.
Yeah, those are great weapons.
They're so pretty.
So the next piece is I wrote it as how Demigod leads into inner character role playing, and a lot of that I think had to do with the tangles and the spindle, which we kind of already discussed a little bit, but I do want to circle back to the tangles because I don't think we talked about like the player to player tangles and stuff like that, and the I know it's not called the inciting incident, but that's what my brain keeps calling it. And both of those together, I think, establish one. It eliminates the you meet in a tavern completely out the window. You all know each other for a year, and every time I've played, or every 2 times I've played, when the herald says it's been a year, everyone has an idea of what's been happening in that year, because at that point you've already implemented so many different things about the characters that you give them that much of an amount of time. Now they, I think it'd be really cool if in that year, me and you started doing this business thing or started doing this other thing, or
opened a kickboxing gym.
Yeah, something. started a blog, a book blog about all this old books or some, everyone has these ideas immediately, and it really plays into making a group dynamic. Also, you have to be a group.
I like the year or so feels like enough time that it feels like something significant could have happened, but it's not so much time that you're like, well, let's not just wipe all that time like this. But it also like the effort is to fill in the gap of your forced, solitude. I mean, not that you couldn't be around people, but you're not supposed to be around demigods. So even if you had like seen each other in passing, you're not supposed to hang out together before now. So it sort of opens the door to say, oh, hey, this is a thing no other demigods can do, like hang out together. What does that look like for us?
I love the idea that they're all just excited puppies. I can hang out with other puppies. Let's do all the things.
Let's use powers together.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I enjoy most, especially even with other PBTA games that Demigods, I think, brings to the table, is that with the spindle and the tangles and the year skip, like all together, you start the game with relationships. And it's a bit more than like the bonds that you get in Masks. I don't know if they're called bonds off the top of my head, but it feels a bit more than that, because the
I don't know if you could hear my dog on the mic.
No, it's fine.
Okay, she's making the most horrible sounds, and she's just looking at the treats on the counter and giving me the evil eye of like, that is her great distress right now. So sorry.
She vastly disagrees with my points about the gameplay and also not giving her treats.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I think I was winding down there.
I just didn't want anyone to think my dog is abused. She's just very sad right now.
She just doesn't agree with you, but she's not old enough to have a valid opinion yet.
So right.
Get over it.
I think for me, I really love having the tangles here. I mean, I know other PBTA games do it too in different forms, but like similar things, like connections you have with the other player characters, just because it really gave me an idea of how I would interact with these other characters. If you do start an RPG and it's just everybody meets for the first time in a bar and you don't know anything about each other, well, you're going to be treating everybody kind of the same. But since it's been a year and I already know that I really enjoyed pushing Nick's character's buttons, cool, I know what to do just when I'm bored. Like, okay, what can I do to Val? All right, here we go.
Yeah, well, and hopefully that tells you something about both characters. You know,
Yeah.
is it the Artisan? I think has one because we did another little playtest game recently, and it has on there like if so and so drags me to another party, I'm gonna scream, and that says so and so likes going to parties, and I don't. And the Artisan was like, I don't want to pick this one because I think my character likes partying. I'm like, okay, cool. Don't do that one. And gave her the opportunity to like be a little more flexible with that concept.
Yeah. I also think that's another thing that just kind of adds to the whole like individuals thing that I really like. And like I like the Reaper ones. They make me laugh. Like one of them's like, yeah, I bargained with this other Reaper for so and so's life. And that implies that we did something in the past year that you ended up dead. And it's like that kind of adds another layer because it's like, yeah, this character has died before. And like, do they feel guilty about the death? Do they feel like they owe the Reaper their life? Do they even know that the Reaper is the one that brought him back? And I kind of like that. The bonds are really fun and all the little tangles. And I love that that's the name for them because that's what it feels like. Like all these little things that just got in the way but are like really fun. And it kind of like helps you build your character in this like way that I'm not used to with a lot of the games that I play. Like I said, I play a lot of Fate, and it has a similar mechanic, but almost completely different in that like you're supposed to build the story beforehand, but the way that we play it, we don't do that. So I kind of missed that like joint storytelling thing. It like allows you to like, yeah, I like to play pranks with this person, but you go like, are you cool with that? And it's like, yeah, maybe we did these kind of things, or like how extreme are these pranks? And I enjoy it. I'm not going to say anything bad about this game. I just can't.
Oh no, I think even the tangles that you don't use say something about your character too. Like, and I think that's
hopefully
kind of what you were saying as well. Because I didn't pick the you've slept with blank, but there's no real emotion there because I didn't think Val would do that with any of the demigods. And I wanted to establish there are feelings for Dylan, so we can't put them in that spot. So even what you don't pick works out. All right. Our next one is probably short because we only did one of them, but it was on the Ascendance moves. But I'm sure if you have the sheet in front of you or whichever, you at least saw the Ascendance move. It was part of the decision-making process probably in what you picked. I'll start because I did an Ascendance move. I had no intention of doing it until it happened. Like, it wasn't something that I planned for or anything like that. But it is cool to have this sort of get out of jail free card if you've gotten yourself way far behind the 8 ball like we did. And it's not just like we slip out and barely escape. No, it's like suddenly everything goes incredibly well for everyone and you have this moment and it's great. There's probably going to be kickback later though. And both of those combined is like, okay, you can get out of this one situation fine, but the rest of your situations moving forward are going to be at some sort of disadvantage.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool mechanic. The permanent consequences changed from the first play test to the second one. And I like them quite a bit. Are they static throughout the different playbooks? Or
currently, there's one unique one, and then 4 that everyone has the same choices. I want to change it to 2 unique ones, but I'm still working through that process. So,
Okay.
Yeah, and I want it to feel substantial. Like I want one that doesn't feel like a real bad hit, and I want one that's like, oh no, what have I done? So people can choose like, oh yeah, that was a really crappy situation, and like I should have a bigger hit to my character for that, and have some choice about that. And you know what? If power gamers want to just pick the little hit every time, like, okay, have fun. Like if you're having fun, then you're doing it right. That's okay.
Now, remind me, you don't have to spend strings to use your ascension move, right?
No, Ascendance is it actually was originally kind of like how Masks did their what's it called?
Moment
Moment of truth.
Yeah, the moment of truth, where you have to like unlock it.
Yeah. But that's what I kind of like about Demigods. It's not something you're like, okay, I don't have enough of this like expendable resource to use this, but I need it really bad. How do I like mess up some rolls so that I can get it? So I kind of like that that's a thing that you can just whip out if you really need. But I also like that if you use it X amount of times, you're like, okay, make a new character.
Yep. Yeah, it was originally I had it as a thing that you had to unlock, and then maybe you could unlock it a second time, and then great. But then it just felt like, wow, I did this huge cool thing, and okay, move on with our lives. And in sort of embracing that idea of the arc of these characters is godhood eventually anyway, that this is the sort of way that you like speed it up. And okay, cool, your character became a god, but you're not in the game anymore. Like you have to make a new character. Feels like a good consequence to using too much power too fast.
Yeah.
Have you ever done a playtest where somebody did all 3 of them?
Well, the long play we did on Happy Jacks, there was, I don't want to spoil anything, but there were some epic moments.
Nice. I was just curious because we only did the one shot, and I think it would be kind of fun to. I really want to do a long-term campaign with this. I feel like there's a lot of potential in it.
It is a fun watch if it's okay to plug the show.
Oh, please.
It was called Revelations. So if you do like Happy Jack's Revelations, it's podcast form, it's video. You can look it up wherever. But
Gotcha.
We had a pretty good story. It was fun.
Gonna look that
I think
one
that
up.
would be
It's definitely not for kids, though. I should say there's a lot of like grown-up language and sexy times, and you should know that ahead of.
I think that was going to be the case with that player base, no matter what. But
yeah.
No, I've listened to that whole thing. That's where I picked up Demigods from. That's why I reached out to Jason. Like all of that sort of led to this. But it was like that was a very different game from the first playtest I ran, which was a very different game from this playtest. Like the game's been evolving and getting better, I would say. I'm
glad that it feels like that. I think it's getting better. I'm actually finally at the point where my sort of self-consciousness can let me say like I made a thing and I think it's okay. Is like just a wild thing to come out of my mouth. But yeah, I like it.
You did an amazing job, dude.
It is very, very good. Now, our next topic, I would ask you to like step away from being the creator of the game and talk about, as a herald, like what work went into preparing. What would you recommend work to go into preparing? Like, if I, who have now played 2 games, or Scott, who has now played 2 games, or Bailey, who has played 1, we're like, okay, I want to run the game. What would your recommendations be? What did you do in this one shot? That sort of stuff.
So one recommendation is I would say spend 35 years of your life obsessed with mythology.
Okay, be right back.
Yeah.
I was going to say I'm 28. Does that count?
But that's not really what I mean. But the main thing I would say is if you're getting a group together and you're going to play This doesn't work at a convention game or anything, but if you're going to get a group of friends together for a campaign, I would ask everyone to pick their divine parent ahead of time. Even if they don't pick, like, ideally you should build your characters together. But if everyone can just pick that, it gives the herald a chance to, like, okay, I'm going to go Google the Japanese pantheon because I don't know who the Shinto gods are, or the Hindu god. Like, there's literally thousands of Hindu gods. Like, if somebody's going to pick from a pantheon like that, you're going to want to just do like a quick Google, a little bit of prep on what's the general theme of this, what are some of the other gods like, what are the politics of the pantheon, because that's the kind of stuff that the stories ideally should revolve around the characters, obviously, and the biggest, most important, powerful influences in their life are their parental pantheons. So that'd be step one, is ask for the divine parents ahead of time and try to do a little bit of research on that, so that you can theme appropriately. Second is you may want to decide if there are, once you've looked into these pantheons a little bit, no pantheon is all good guys and all bad guys, so you might want to think about, like, who is maybe an antagonistic character, who's the, like, cool aunt who's going to take you out drinking, just to have some idea of that extended family a little bit. And then plenty of heralds, I think, will want to have some idea of a plot, but I've had more fun heralding when I come in with an idea as slim as this god wants this guy to win a competition, and I think the thing to keep in mind is that the story should revolve around the characters' pantheons, either antagonistically or as protagonists, and, like, their pantheon wants them to do something good and other people are trying to stop them, or your pantheon is pressuring you into doing something bad and, like, crap, you have to do it. So is there a way you can get out of it, or is there a way you could do it and not, like, blow up a bridge, or whatever it is. Having a rough idea of, long term, where is this supposed to go? Okay, well, this god is going to ask them to help this guy win this competition, and he's going to pay them. And there are various types of things in the game that are helpful. That they might pay you in magic items or orichalcum, or all sorts of things like that. But less prep is probably better. I wouldn't want like a notebook of NPCs ready to go. A list of names is fantastic to have next to you. And lots of games have something like this handy. And just have a bunch of names that you could pull from, because you're going to make people up on the fly. And giving people names, even like the barista at this coffee bar who isn't part of the story, one, it makes people think, is this someone who's part of the story? Like, why do they have a name? This is a clickable named character. What do I do? But it also just makes it feel real. And one of the, like, primary agendas of the Herald is to make the world feel real, make it feel like our world if all this supernatural stuff was real, So that's a couple of the goals that I look for when I'm setting up.
That was more than a couple, and it was very, very good. So thank you. Thank you very much. I think, honestly, I might isolate that question and send it to you, because you'll probably want that for later.
Okay. Do you have any questions about, like, something specific you would want to do if you're setting up to run a game, or, like, should I do this, or is this important, or anything like that?
I think my big one was prep, and you covered that fairly well. Scott or Bailey, did you have anything that you would want to know about setting up a game?
I'm sure I will think of something at the most inopportune moment.
Uh, I mean, aside from what you've said already, Jason, I think the biggest thing would be about creating the monsters and the special abilities that the enemies have.
That's exactly where my head went.
I'm like, okay, you've got these demigods and they're super powered, so they better be fighting something super powered right back. And like, if there's a standard for that, or if it's a bit more free form.
There is a standard for that I should mention, because I don't always think of it because I just do it real quick in my head. But a good kind of rule to start with, and then be flexible with this, is so the demigods can all take 7 harm before they're dead, but it's always going to be 4 or 5 demigods versus a monster, or like a group of little monsters, but you could just treat them as one thing as far as like how much harm can they take. A couple things you want to think about. One, start with giving it about as much harm as 7 times the number of demigods, right? So I would think of like a basic monster is having, for 3 demigods, 18 to 22 harm, something like that. Or if they're a little wimpier, they're 15 or 12, something like that. And also you want to think about like, did everyone take an epic weapon? Right? Like, is everyone doing 4 harm and they're fighty and they want to do that way? Or do you have a group where it's kind of split? You have some fighty people and people who want to talk their way out, or is it mostly talky? So you want to sort of balance the harm capacity in that way. Number 2 for monsters is think about a cool thing that it can do that makes it special, like be animated fabric that wraps around you, tries to take over your body. And then try to think of a weakness that could be exploited, and like discovered and exploited, that if the players don't bother to try and look for a weakness, like they could still beat the thing, but like, man, that would have been a lot easier if we realized, putting turpentine on it would make it fall apart, things like that.
That was going to be my next question, is like, how do you basically get, like, if you make a monster, how do you do epic moves, essentially?
And I mean, you could do this however you want. I would just say versus a god, you're probably not going to win. Like, it's just probably not going to work out. Like, maybe if you set it up and find their weak, but if you just go toe to toe with a god, like, I'm not even going to roll dice. And the follow up to that just flew right out of my brain.
My next question was going to be, how would you do it with if they were fighting another demigod? Because you mentioned people outside of your spindle, if they come in, it kind of warps stuff. So that would be
how
do I do that?
Like, throwing down with a demigod in the mortal plane is a very dangerous thing to do, because of the magic warping and all that sort of thing. And also I try to stress, like, there is kind of a political nature to this game where, yes, we can go hit things very hard, but there are going to be repercussions to that. And so that's the other thing to think about is, if you're going to go after this Hindu demon, well, okay, there's like 800 gods who think that demon's doing the right thing, so like, maybe you don't want to lop its head off, but you could like beat it up or talk to, like trying to find those in between areas. It'll, if you want to make hack and slash demigods, I think you can. I think there's a version of that works, but I think it is a fuller game with that sort of with the political stakes of making a decision like that.
I've never felt like the best course of action was to fight something in a Demigods game. And I've also never felt that way in real life. So I think it's working as intended. But like jokes aside, I honestly feel like the game does lead, like you said, to a little bit political, more so than like just sort of intrigue rather than combat.
I mean, it's It's really I had this was a fair question that came up and that I realized I had never really explained very well in like the demo materials. But people were basically going like, okay, this is all cool, but like what's the point of the game? Like what do you do? And I realized I had never really talked about the fact that like, oh, there's political intrigue. Like these are families, pantheons are families, and families are complicated and messy and problematic, and that kind of stuff is hopefully central, which is why you're going to want to do a little bit of research on the parents. And then also there's a component to the game coming out soon on sort of mirroring the literature concept of the hero's journey. Not something that I made up, but like that's sort of like classic structuring of a story. And so a little bit like how Monster of the Week does investigations and mysteries and things like that, where you're working together, you're trying to build up some information, hopefully like find a monster's weakness or find a way to do this without killing it, or that kind of task is what you're looking at.
All right. I think that was a lot of very, very good info
Mm-hmm.
to start a game. Next on the docket, and this, if we don't have anything, that's fine. I just wanted to give the opportunity here, would be for the players to provide any commentary on the other players' characters or players or anything they thought was cool or awesome or anything like that. Anyone want to jump in there first? Because I saw two very interesting faces when I said that.
No. That was not meant to be like, like, oh, I better watch my tongue here. No, it's just like, this is like the first sessions that I played with your characters, so just watching what you all brought to the table with them was just very fun and interesting to see. Like, oh, what pantheon do you actually care about? Like, what sort of background are you bringing, and then how does that character even act? It just felt like there was so much new stuff, and it was all so much fun that, like, yeah. Like, I don't want to gush about, oh, this time when Bailey did this or Nick did that, it was great, because like I loved everything. It was a good time.
Right. I just love that I did not go into this game expecting to be Team Mom, and again, I ended up Team Mom, and it was just fun because it was like, okay, so I'm gonna make kind of a healer, and I'm gonna have a little bit of fun, but I have a weapon if I need it. And then you're like, oh yeah, none of us can fight, and I was like, that's why Bernie hangs out with these people. Like, I have to protect my idiots, and I love that because that's me as a person, and that was just a lot of fun. But I think you guys played your characters really well, and I enjoyed the way that they were formed. And again, I would love to do this as like a long-term campaign. I understand that that's maybe not something we can do, but anytime that you guys are like, hey, you want to pick this up again, I'm gonna have the character sheet framed and be like, yeah, start playing again.
Yeah, I also really have only positive things to say, but like, first of all, Bailey, like the enthusiasm that you had for all of the, and I'm gonna say this in the kindest way because it's a negative word, but I mean it fantastically. All the stupid things that your character had was amazing.
Yeah.
And
I got yes-anded.
Yeah, and it made the game that much better because just the fun that was brought for that was awesome. And then Eklund, I did not go into this game looking to make someone who would be like a foil for a trickster. Like, that's not what I built. But once it started happening, I was definitely like, yeah, I'm here for this. Let's go. Like, I wanna help you like have these opportunities to be the trickster. And I mean, you took every softball that I lobbed and basically knocked it out of the park. And it was a really fun dynamic that I didn't even know I would have when I built the character, and even through a lot of the character building, you know. But once we started getting into it, it was awesome.
Well, I have to say too that Nick, I think you did a particularly good job with the Muse, because I think the thing that's challenging for a lot of people playing the Muse is understanding that like their job is to make everyone else better at something. You know, they're that sort of bard buff character, and that doesn't appeal to everyone, which I get. But it was important for me to have it in the game because that's like that and the warrior. Those are like the two kinds of things I like to play. So you know, I thought everybody like really embraced the idea of the character without necessarily going into a tired old stale trope. So that was really fun for me to see.
That does lead into the next topic of the Herald giving the commentary.
Oh, whoops.
No, you're good.
I did it.
Continue.
Preemptive.
He saw the future.
Yeah.
If you have any, ooh, just knocked my table. Well, sorry about that. If you have anything else you want to throw in there, go ahead.
No, I just really liked the yes and was not all on my side. It was, you know, everyone agreeing in the best way of like, oh yeah, that's a cool idea. And then what if that tied into this thing that I have, and then you made this for me, and then I screwed you over because this happened. You know, like being willing to lean into not just the positive connections, but some of the things that are a little bit problematic. You know, makes it a richer story, even though we only had a few hours to play together. These characters were all like three-dimensional and felt like real people in a situation in the real world dealing with supernatural stuff.
So the next one is what you thought you could do better. Nothing is an acceptable answer here if you don't want to like get too far into it, but I want to give everyone this sort of like, oh, I know I kind of fall into this trap and I did it again, or, you know, I saw this part of the game and I really wanted to use it and then completely forgot about it, or something like that. I can go first because I have a thing, but if anyone else wants to go, I'll give like a momentary pause.
Oh,
How about I go first?
Okay.
And we'll flip the script.
Yeah.
I think I could have, like, I'm actually like looking back at it, I was a little disappointed that it all ended in a big boss fight. You know, like the skills that you all have for doing really finessey, detailed, interesting things are good. And I think part of me was like, well, I bet Bailey wants to swing that sword at something. And, you know, I just wanted to make an opportunity for that as well. Like if somebody takes an epic weapon, like hopefully they get to use it. Otherwise, it's sort of the Chekhov's gun. But we also had, you know, Chekhov's charisma and phenomenal cosmic powers. So I feel like I could have had a little bit more nuanced interaction at the end there, but I really liked how everybody handled the situation you were in. That was super fun.
Okay. I will go next. Apart from some of the normal things that I try to improve on, which is like sharing spotlight and stuff like that, because being a GM, I'm used to being the dictator of things, and stepping back and being a player is a little difficult for me. So I definitely tried to like share as much as I could, apart from the Ascendance move where I was like, "Nah, I'm doing this. This is the one thing that I will give me. I'm doing this." The thing that I wish I didn't do is I wish I didn't play a strong female character who ended up using her sexuality to solve a problem. And I didn't do it on purpose. Like that's not how I built the character. And I just wish that I could have on the spot thought of something that would have worked better in that situation. But I didn't, and it happened, and we move on. But like just sort of moving forward, I just wish I didn't use that as the solution. I wish I could have had that strong female character who didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? If not, we can move on. That's also
I
fine.
don't know. Maybe Bailey and I were perfect.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say
okay.
I'm trying to think of how to word mine because I know there was a lot I could have done better, but
And
I
it's not
really
like let's all beat up on ourselves fast. It's just more of like, hey,
no,
if there's something you
it's
want to get out
constructive.
there. Yeah.
I wish I hadn't let myself be teen mom. Like I do that almost every single time, but it's because like some part of my brain won't allow me not to. I've never been able to play that character that's like, yeah, go ahead, run into that, have fun. I just can't. Like just I have that instinct where I'm like, nope, let's not let them hurt themselves. And I feel like I had with Bernie, I had an opportunity to basically be Wednesday Adams about the whole thing. And I really kind of wanted to play her that way because in my head she's very cynical, she's very sarcastic. I'm just not quick enough with a lot of that stuff to make it work the way I wanted to. And I think if I had had a little bit more time to prep, I would have looked up more Arabic words to yell at Eklund because I feel like that would have been a fun thing to do with her character. Um,
Mhm.
I feel like I didn't interact enough with Val because I feel like they've been together for a year. They probably know each other just a little bit. And I kind of would have liked to have done a little bit more with that aside from just kind of like poking at her and being like, yeah, go ahead, be stupid.
Mhm.
So,
I think that also had a little bit to do with time constraints as well.
yeah.
A long
There's
long form campaign, I'm sure we would have had decompressions from after the fight or so on and so forth where we could have those like 20-minute long interpersonal like just talking bits. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking at my character sheet now where I have all my notes, I'm realizing, man, there's at least a couple of my tangles that I didn't really use at all. Like, I could have leaned into them a little bit more, and it's just like, but those were on the more sinister side of what Eklund was. And I think Eklund was just having too much fun the whole time. Like, I didn't want to throw Val under the bus. I didn't want to be suspicious of Bernie all the time. He was in fun mode. Like, maybe with more time, or if I'd just paid better attention, like I could have done some of that stuff, but
I also didn't get to ride my hippo, and that makes me
it
mad.
wasn't the vibe that I was feeling.
Dang.
So
Yeah. I regret that I didn't have the hippo like Kool-Aid man through the wall into
I
the
was
fight.
gonna ask if I could right before Nick did his ascension move. I was this close to being like, can I just summon the hippo?
definitely would have made the fight a little different, that's for sure.
There would have been a hippo.
Yep.
I could have charged into battle on a hippo.
And our last topic is one that I think is important, especially after the topic that we just did. What you thought you did well. And since everyone participated in the what they thought they didn't do well, I will ask everyone to participate in this bit so we all feel better about ourselves and don't cry after this.
I had fun.
We can go in the same order. So Jason first.
Okay. I think I liked the some of the questions I was asking during the Tangles phase. I was happy with that. Like, I think some of like the extra questions I was asking, like maybe brought out some of those relationships. And also, I am particularly proud of the violent fabric that I've never used, but like that's never been something I've used before and hadn't thought of it until you were literally in that situation. And I was like, oh, animated fabric. And I don't know, it was fun, and I did that thing, and I enjoyed it.
I think it ended up being terrifying too. It was pretty cool.
It was a ton of fun to be like stitched to an enemy.
That is horror, is what it is. Like that, and it was presented in a fun, like, hey, you're gonna overcome this type of way. But in any other setting, that's a horror thing.
Yeah, for some reason I find my brain just like slides very easily into body horror topics, and I'm like, what is wrong with that? But now I just lean into it. Like, this is the story I tell.
It was very cool.
But yeah.
So for my own, I'm very happy that I got to use and the way I got to use Snake Eyes, because when I picked it, that was one of the things that I was like circled, like use at least once in the game, and I had a perfect opportunity and I took it, and I think it ended up with a really cool scene that really enhanced the game. So I am very
Yeah.
glad that I A took the move and B got to implement it into the game. Oh goodness. Um, I think Bailey would be next if I remember my order correctly.
I'm proud that I actually got to try to use almost every single one of my moves. I didn't get to use the trade something for heals. I really wanted to use that one. I'm sad I didn't get to. But I also like that there were several times when I asked stuff where Jason just kind of went and had to like think about it. I was once told that if you don't make your GM say WTF at least once in the game, you're not doing your job as a player. And I like creative problem solving, so I really enjoyed that part of the game, and I like that I got to do a lot of it where I'm like, all right, how can I do this, or like how can I set this up, and maybe I can use this way because it doesn't necessarily say I can't. So I enjoyed that part.
I mean, for me, it's kind of like the opposite of what I thought I did bad. Like, I leaned into the fun side of being a trickster, which for me, I've always thought like trickster gods should be having a good time and not just all like, I'm gonna do whatever and hopefully like I'll get what I want in the end of it. It's just, sometimes it's fun when you do something just for a laugh for yourself. Even if nobody else enjoys it. So like having the opportunity to play off of Val a lot, like felt really good and fun. And like, yeah, I'm a 19-year-old demigod who is a trickster. Like, what else am I gonna do besides mess with my friends? And then yeah, actually like going in and trying out all the moves. I didn't get to use the Ascendants though, but I'm not gonna complain about that.
Yeah, they're hard to work into one shots just because they're such like a big, campaign focused thing.
Yeah, but no, I definitely thought there was a lot of good interpersonal stuff between us as players. Like we weren't trying to stomp down anybody's ideas. It was a very supportive, if not always completely cooperative group.
Oh, it was great though. There were long periods where I didn't have to do anything because the three of you were like interacting and having this great conversation, and I could just sprinkle in a problem.
And I think that any of the conflict was between the players, or not the players, but the characters and not the players. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
The conflict was between the characters and not the players. Like,
Yes.
Scott was not bugging Nick. Eklund was bugging Val. That's a very key
character conflict good, player conflict bad.
Yeah, that's a huge thing.
And it wasn't like I'm going to cut their hand off because that would be funny. It's just little things.
Yeah.
Lose a hand.
The difference between being a trickster and being the Joker.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, I think we all hated it. Everyone had a bad time.
No, I'm sorry, everybody.
No, I mean, obviously we all had a great time. And, it's a wonderful game, Jason. Thank you for both making the game and for heralding for us.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
You are welcome back anytime with the proper amount of planning. But everyone should be paying attention to Demigods. Go ahead.
Demigods PBTA.com.
Thank you. DemigodsPBTA.com. And that's where you'll get all the information. You can sign up for the newsletter. And you should.
Oh, you can also just get there through my Twitter. There's a link to it there. So
awesome. So, does anyone have any like big wrap up things they want to talk about? Because I think we went over pretty much everything.
I'm not kidding. This is going to be the first Kickstarter I ever back. I'm just waiting for the announcement.
I will say tentatively my goal is April. Also, it's my birthday in April, and I feel like this would be a nice birthday present to me. Um,
I give you
so
$4.20. JK.
So keep an eye on April-ish at PBTA or
Fingers crossed.
PBTA.com.
Yeah.
And again, we are going to be going back to probably bi-weekly Saturdays coming up. I know that we're gonna hopefully be starting masks back up in February. So keep your eye out for that. We might miss a week or a session here based on that. But we will be getting back to season 2 of our mask game shortly. We are raising money for Doctors Without Borders during probably the entirety of Mask season 2. So
Awesome.
come on, hang out, and we'll be doing some teenage superhero-y angst type stuff.
I can't find my season 2 picture. I was gonna hold it up.
I'm going to let everyone tell people what they do and where they can be found and all the other things. And then I have a thing at the end, but we will go around and go in alphabetical order this time, starting with Bailey.
Hi, I'm Bailey. You can find me at Ironic Adventures, and hopefully sometime in February